All right, coming back. It's been a minute. I figured now is a good time to come in with kind of like a how my faith began video. And right now this is not completely set up. This is going to be the room where I do most of the videos, God willing, hopefully. The Lord has definitely been pressing on me to do this and set this up, and I've been lazy. I've been very in my own head about it. I'm sure a lot of you out there probably are in a similar boat. Maybe the Lord is pushing you to do some sort of social media content creation for the kingdom. I encourage you, if the Lord is putting it on your heart to set something up like this, just do it. He put it on my heart today. It's not about trying to be seen. It's not about being famous. It's not about making money. It's not about viewership. It's about spreading the gospel. It's about talking about our faith and who the Lord is and what he's done, and bringing as many people to the saving grace of Jesus as possible. And we're going to get into it. I'm going to explain how I came to my own faith in the Lord, and where I came from, and just a little bit about myself and who I am, for those of you who actually, care to know. I'm praying that this is an encouragement for somebody who may be second guessing their walk in faith, maybe second guessing whether or not to set up a channel. At the end of the day, this is everything that we do is to glorify the Lord, regardless of what we do. In all things, do it as unto the Lord. So this I'm doing, and I'm praying, and I'm putting it in faith, and I'm giving it to God before anything, knowing that it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about what people think of me, what people think of any of this, because at the end of the God wins. He's already won. The cross has already defeated the enemy, and for those who believe and trust in Jesus, we're saved. But now it's our duty, it's our mandate, it's our calling to preach the gospel and to reach as many as possible. So if this is where the Lord is leading you, I pray this is an encouragement again. But to start, I was born and raised in a Christian home, born in Brooklyn, Brownsville to be exact. We were there for some time, so it was me, my mom, my dad, and two sisters. I do have a brother as well, but he wasn't living with us at the time. And that we'll get into probably some other video if necessary. I don't think it's necessary. It is what it is, though. But we lived there for a while, but we moved around a lot as well. So from Brooklyn, we ended up moving to Puerto Rico, then back to Brooklyn, then eventually Queens, Florida, back to Queens. It was a lot of in and out in a lot of different places. So we didn't really, or at least I didn't, make too many friends starting off, because we would end up moving a couple years later anyway. I was diagnosed with ADHD very young, and back then it was still being researched. It is still now, but I feel like there's more of an understanding as to what it is. I was prescribed Ritalin at a young age, and it was a lot for my mom to have to deal with, because I was off the wall. I wasn't listening to anybody who deals with a person or a child who has ADD or ADHD. You could understand how difficult it is to keep them focused and staying still. The only way that'll happen is if you find some sort of interest. For me, it was always video games. I'm pretty sure for a lot of people that have ADD or ADHD, they find some sort of comfort in video games or movies or music. It's always something to stimulate the brain and to kind of get that dopamine hit. We understand that now. I think that's why I can drink coffee. And yeah, a lot of Hispanics say this, but I think it kind of can maybe be linked to ADD, but you can drink coffee and then fall asleep. Definitely get checked if you're falling asleep after having coffee. You just might have ADD or some sort of chemical imbalance. But I'm not a doctor, so don't take my word for it. Eventually, we settled down in South Ozone Park, Queens. And that's where my mom and dad, they ended up buying a house. And it was our first official home that we had, which was awesome because we, were always in apartments, whether it was in Brooklyn, Queens, Florida. It was never something that was ours. So to finally have a house, that was a big deal. We had a backyard. I had my own room. My sisters, unfortunately, they had to share a room together. But being that I was the only boy, that was a plus for me. But I was the middle child. So I have an older sister. There's me, younger sister. And then my brother is older than us. He is technically, I don't know if it's half brother or, I think half brother because he's from my father's side, but we don't look at it that way. He's my brother. He's my blood. I don't look at it any other way. And we were constantly going to church. From growing up, we went to church at least 3-4 times a week. My mom made it a point to have us in prayer, in some sort of youth group, Sunday service, Sunday school, and it was predominantly Pentecostal churches that we went to. So for anyone who understands a lot of the denominations, and it's not to put out anything against Pentecostal churches, they're phenomenal. The largest organization, Assemblies of God, is mainly Pentecostal, and they have been doing amazing work. But there is a side to Pentecostal churches that can be a little legalistic. Again, that's not all of them, and it's not just Pentecostal churches, that's across the board. You have legalism in many denominations. So I grew up in a semi-legalistic Pentecostal upbringing. And it's not even to say that my mom was strict on us. She wasn't at all. But she definitely put down her foot on a lot of things. And she made it a point to make sure that we were going to church. And she would always put Christian music on in the weekends while cleaning the house. She was reading. Whenever we would fight, she would have us hold hands and pray. And we would laugh and we would kind of like look and make funny faces. But honestly, I believe it worked because 9 times out of 10, we were completely calm after that. But the first official time I can say that I felt the Lord move in me was an event called Winterfest. And the church I was going to at the time was Emmanuel. It was a Assemblies of God Pentecostal church, and Winterfest was kind of like a teenager, young adult event in the Poconos. So we went, and all I wanted to do was go into the arcade. I didn't want to go into the event because it was a 3-day event with preaching, praying, and, some singers that came up. But then eventually, the last day, they had called all the churches to come together and to pray for their churches, to pray for their members, to pray for their youth. And they grabbed me from the arcade that was there, pulled me into the circle that they had, and all I remember was looking around and then closing my eyes. As soon as I closed my eyes, it's like the weight of 1,000 worlds dropped down on my shoulders. I did not give any thought to God until that point, because it was just a routine thing that we did on Sundays. It wasn't anything that was personal for me, because it was what we did. It's what people do. It's what Hispanics do. They go to church. So when I felt this massive drop in my entire body, I fell to the ground and I could not stop crying. And I felt this massive warmth all over me, and what felt like an embrace and then a comforting word. But I can't even tell you what the words were. It was just, I knew that I was in the presence of God. And a lot of you will say, oh, that's nonsense, that's not real, it's fake. I can't tell you what your experience is, and you can't tell me what mine is. I know what I went through. I know the type of person I am. I'm a huge skeptic. I'm very much about facts. And at that point, couldn't nobody tell me that God was fake. It didn't matter what you said to me. Didn't matter what kind of evidence you brought. I knew at that moment, because I've never felt anything like that before. And in my heart and in my mind, I knew there is a God. But that's where it kind of left off for some time, because I didn't pursue building a relationship. I didn't even know what that meant, because I didn't go into reading the word. I didn't study. I didn't pray. I knew God was real. So fast forward, I'm in my last year of high school. My sister, older sister, she joins the Marine Corps, and this was a year prior. She ends up coming back to her recruiting duty, which any Marine knows that after you do boot camp, you have to do 2 weeks in your recruiting station, and then you get shipped to your MOS school. So my sister was here for her recruiting duty, and she ended up getting me to join. So I signed the paperwork. I did a lot of exercising to lose weight. I was a little overweight, and eventually it shipped off. It was September 11th, crazy enough, 2006. I went and joined the Marines. And this is crazy. The second time I felt the Lord move in my life was in Paris Island on a Sunday boot camp when we went to church. So again, for any Marine that knows, they would allow you to go to church on Sundays, a church of your choosing, And the drill instructors basically leave you alone for the couple of hours. So at first we all ran to church just to avoid being around the drill instructors. But eventually it blossomed into something a lot more and a lot deeper. And I know for me, I don't know if it was the second or third time, but it was one of the times that we went to church and I felt the Holy Spirit move through the entire church, and I saw every recruit in the building in tears, singing, praising, jumping, screaming that Jesus is alive and he is Lord. And I'm telling you, there was like a good 30, maybe 40 Marines in that building, tears streaming down their face, glorifying God, and we were hugging each other saying, yes, he is alive. And it was at that moment that I gave even more attention to Jesus as an actual personable being in my life, but still didn't develop a relationship. After I got out of boot, I was in the Marine Corps Reserves, so ended up back in New York. And then what ended up happening was I was kind of in this party lifestyle. You know, fresh out of boot camp, I'm fit, I get a job, so I'm working and I'm making money. And all the nonsense that comes with partying ensued in my life, and I went down a really dark road for a while. A couple of years of me partying, drinking, smoking. I don't want to get into the details. I don't like speaking about that part of my life, but you can kind of put the pieces together, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know the stuff that goes on in a lot of parties in New York, especially in 2007, 2008, 2009. But anyway, regardless, I remember one day I was working and this gentleman walks in and he starts to talk to me about the Lord, and he says, "Hey, do you know who Jesus is? Do you know who God is?" And I was like, yeah, I grew up in church. Of course I know. So he's asking me questions, and, I'm giving him like just one-word answers, nothing really too much. And I didn't think anything of it. But he kept coming by, and I kept on seeing him. He kept talking to me. And we got really close. His name is August. Awesome dude. And he invited me to church one day. It was Christ Tabernacle Church. I think now it's named differently, but back then it was known as Christ Tabernacle Church, and it was with Pastor Michael and Maria Durso. And I remember, I think it was an Easter Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. And what the message was, can't tell you. All I know is that at that moment, all I wanted to do was dedicate my entire life to the Lord. And from there, I think most Christians end up having this kind of spiritual high moment where all they want to do is preach to everyone they know and tell everybody about Jesus and what he's done and what he can do for them. So all of my friends, they're not horrible people. The friends that I had at this time, they're really good individuals. Obviously, Jesus says no one's good except the Father. I understand that, but in my mind at that moment, I was adamant to share the gospel with my friends, the ones that I was partying with, and to have them pull away from this life because I knew it was empty, and I was in a very depressed state at this time, and I wanted to kill myself. I had a lot of suicidal thoughts and a lot of bad moments. So I figured at this moment I had a renewed joy for life and wanted my friends to experience the same. So every time that I would get a chance, I would try to preach to my friends. And it was kind of met with ridicule and being poked fun at. I slowly started to pull away. And little by little, I stopped hanging out. I stopped calling. I stopped talking to a lot of them. Eventually, it was just me and the Lord. And at that time, I think I was more adamant to be by myself than to be around people that would cause me to fail. And that went on for, I think, a year or two, where I was absolutely away from any friends, from really talking to anybody, even family. I was going through a lot of issues with family members, and I stepped away from family as well. And it was just me and the Lord. I was reading my word. I was in prayer. I was really seeking everything that I could. A lot of my relationships, I had a girlfriend at the time who was trying to go to church as well and to, walk this out with me, but it was bad because we were in sin, and it was just a constant back and forth, and I was beating myself up to the point where I said, I can't be with you. So this is just a sidetrack. I was going to propose to her. It was a ring that her mother had given to me to propose. But I was more proposing to avoid sinning. And I remember my mom prayed. She came to see me because now my family's in Florida. I'm still in New York with my wife, and we prayed, and my mom said, I pray that if this is not of the Lord, that it completely falls apart. And that day I went to go see my girlfriend at the time, and lo and behold, it fell apart. So, and it was necessary, not just for me, but for her, because we were completely in sin, not good for each other. It was toxic. I pray she's doing well. Last I checked a few years ago, she was married with kids. So I continue to pray for them. And this is the after. After not being around people for so long, eventually the Lord ends up bringing me to a group of Christians. And it was through something called small group that Christ Tabernacle was doing, where you meet together with a bunch of people and you pray, you read your word, and you discuss whatever the discussion was at the time, whatever topic they decided to talk about. So from there, my wife ends up being a part of this group. And I remember it was a potluck that they ended up setting up, and I brought in a pastelón. So for anybody who is Puerto Rican, Hispanic, a pastelón is basically a sweet plantain lasagna. So what you do is you slice up the sweet plantains into long, thin strips. You make the ground meat like you would Hispanic, Puerto Rican style. And then you layer it. So It goes plantains, ground meat, and then you have like a beaten egg, and then the process again. Plantains, ground meat, beaten egg. Plantains, ground meat, beaten egg. Until it forms like this massive lasagna of sweet plantains and meat. It tastes phenomenal. So if anybody gets a chance to make that, please do. I encourage you to try it out. It's really good. I haven't made it in a while. I might have to do that for my wife again. But I remember she ate it and said, "Who made this?" And I said, "It was me." And she gave the look of enjoyment and approval. So it put a big smile on my face. I was happy that she liked it, the amount that she did, because a lot of people were eating it, but I wasn't really hearing anything. But after she said that, I started talking to her and starting to get to know her. And little by little, we went from just meeting each other at the small group to going out to like Dunkin' Donuts for a hot chocolate. And then eventually we decided to start dating, which the way that happened is another story, but it was basically my wife who found the courage to finally ask. Again, that's a whole nother story for another day, but we got together in 2014, and from there it was us building our faith in the Lord. She was going to Christ Tabernacle, I was going to Christ Tabernacle, and we were just building and seeking and praying and reading and asking the Lord to guide us in our relationship and in our friendships and in our family. And in 2016, we get married. And from there, again, it's building and seeking and praying. And I think a lot of people can understand this, but usually the first year to 2 years of marriage can be the most difficult. But it's where I feel like the Lord builds you up the most, because you have to kind of learn each other's everything, from mannerisms to things that we like and don't like, to how we do things in the morning. I am a morning person. My wife is not. She's more a night person. So we're constantly back and forth. She was not a coffee drinker. I am a huge coffee drinker. She is now a coffee drinker. We had a lot of similarities with what we like to eat, movies, music, and just a lot of little nuanced things that we learned about each other. And for anybody who is newly married or just fresh into marriage, a year in, even 2 years in, I encourage you, don't let the enemy come in and start to lie to you about your relationship, that it's not of the Lord, and that you went in it too quickly, and maybe you should have slowed down. Should you still be married? You're considering divorce. Look, at the core of every relationship, the way that you make it work is by building your relationship with the Lord. I know that sounds cliche, and I know that sounds very Christianese. The only reason why me and my wife work so well is because of our pursuit in having a relationship with Christ. Because if it wasn't for that, we would have torn each other's heads off. And we've had a lot of moments in which we've screamed and yelled, and but it's a lot of growing, and we're we're getting to know each other more and more, and you don't put a timestamp on when you can fully know a person, because that takes a lifetime. And the same thing goes with knowing Christ. You can't know Christ off of just one reading of the word or one prayer. It takes a lifetime to know Christ. And I think that's why he equates the church to being married, because you're excited about the possibility of marriage, and then when you get married, you think you're gonna have this fairy tale, magical life going forward, but you find out that it's a lot of work, selfless acts, a lot of dying to self and compromise, and understanding that love is not primarily a feeling, but it is an action. It is necessary for us to move past what somebody can do for us, but how we can do for them. So going back, we married in 2016, and 6 years later, 2022, our daughter Sophie is born. She is now 1.5 years, and she is a fireball. I love that little girl. I have been wanting to be a father for a very long time, so I'm grateful to the Lord for giving me the opportunity to be Sophie's dad and for her to be my daughter, and so grateful for my wife, for the mother that she is and what she deals with and what she does every single day. I'm grateful for everything that the Lord has given me. But just to put it all together, this walk is not easy, but it's worth it. And I kind of reminisce back on like all the things that I've done, and I would have wished and hoped to have come to saving grace way longer ago than what I did. But the Lord knows everything. He knows why I came to saving grace when I did, and why everything took place the way that it did. I needed to learn my shortcomings and my weakness. I needed to know the type of person that I was, to know who God is, and to know what he has done for me in my life. And I pray that this is an encouragement to anybody out there. Doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter what you did, what you were a part of. Put your faith in the Lord and let him grow you to who he wants you to be. And don't put a limitation on these things, because you never know where God can take you. You never know what doors he can open. And for anybody who knows who I am, if any of my friends from the past come across these videos, just know that I'm continuing to pray for you guys. And if anybody wants to ever hit me up, please don't hesitate. I would love to get together again and to chop it up, speak about my faith if you choose to. If not, that's fine. I continue to pray for all those individuals in my life, because it molded me to who I am now. All of the bad moments in my life and all the good moments in my life apart from the Lord molded my personality and who I am. And the Lord used all those things, broke things, molded things to make me the person I am today. And I'm sure he's going to use a lot of things that I'm going through now to mold me into the person he needs me to be later on. And I needed to do this video because I was taking forever to set it up, and I need to be faithful to the Lord. I need to do what he has called me to do. And again, it's not for fame, it's not for notoriety and for, becoming some sort of social media person. It's for none of those things. I just know that in this season, I'm not able to preach the word as much as I want to. I'm not around too many individuals. And then the individuals that I do have in my life are already Christian. And I have this urge in me to just speak and to glorify God and to further his kingdom. And I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of the work. I want to put my hands to the plow and to sow seed and to plant. I don't want to sit in the sidelines. I don't want to just let life go and pass me by, and then the Lord returns and he looks and he says, "What did you do with all the talents? What did you do with everything I gave you? What did you do?" I don't want him to come and see that I've done nothing. And I'm praying that this can blossom into something bigger and greater. Not for me again. This is for God. This is for the Lord. This is for his kingdom. And if anybody has any questions, concerns, prayer requests, I ask that you leave a comment. Share the video with somebody if you feel necessary to do so. And just look to the Lord to see what he might call you to do, because he's calling everybody. So don't hesitate. Kind of do it afraid. Just jump in, because he's going to move regardless. So why not be a part of it? So with that, God bless you guys, and just keep this channel in prayer so that I can get this room set up properly, and we can really get into some really deep topics. I'm excited, and I hope to see you guys again. God bless. Have a good one.